Yes, hello beautiful people, and thank you so much for joining us here on Great Day, Louisiana. I'm Malik Mingo. Happy last day of April. I hope you're doing well today. As always, we have a great show for you all. Look, today marks 50 years since the end of the Vietnam War and the beginning of millions of people leaving South Vietnam. Many came to the United States and some ultimately landed here in South Louisiana. It is so important that we share this story, and the Historic New Orleans Collection is helping us out with that. They're preserving the story in their newest free exhibit called Making It Home. Joining me now with more on this exhibition is curator and senior historian Mark Cave. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to talk to you about this because listen, if we don't know our history, we are doomed to repeat it. And it's so important to learn everyone's history, and that's what you all are doing at the Historic New Orleans Collection. But first, let's give people a little bit more of a reminder about the fall of Saigon, which actually ended the Vietnam War, which started this whole refugee process.
Yeah. Well, the fall of Saigon happened April 30th, 1975, and it marked the end of the Vietnam War. It created a refugee crisis where people were associated with South Vietnam. Fled the country. Initially, there were about 130,000 who came to the United States.
Wow.
But then for the next decade, people were trying to escape the country and the communist regime there.
And when we're talking about the fall of Saigon, are we talking about a communist group? What are we talking about when we say Saigon?
Saigon, well, Saigon was the capital of South Vietnam. There was kind of a global struggle between the West and communist forces that were supported by Russia and China. The Western forces lost that war, and the communist government took over Vietnam, and they instituted horrible human rights abuses on the people there, and so many found it intolerable to live and wanted a better life for their children.
Absolutely, and what's so interesting about you all's exhibit is that you document this story in such a beautifully visual way. One thing I really appreciate about the exhibit is that you talk about how these refugees ultimately made their way here to South Louisiana. Why did they choose this area?
Well, we had a very well-developed Catholic Charities Resettlement Bureau here. There was a woman named Elise Cerniglia who grew up in Cuba, and she was responsible for bringing in thousands of Cuban refugees.
Wow.
And so when it came time when the Vietnamese were looking for a home, we had a very well-developed system for the intake of refugees. And so I think that's really what helped New Orleans become a center for the Vietnamese community.
And of course, we love our Vietnamese community here in New Orleans, and that's why it's so important that we share this story, because people may not know. They may love the food, they may love going to Tet Fest, they may love Dong Phung and all of that. But if you don't realize how they got here and how important they are to the American story, then that's a problem. And that's great that you all are doing this for free. It's amazing. But also, you have these oral histories that are also going on throughout the exhibit. Tell me about that piece of the puzzle.
Well, about 10 years ago, we were studying our collection and we realized we had virtually nothing on the Vietnamese community. And so we started to reach out to the elders in the community and have them tell their stories, which is my favorite part of my job, is listening to the stories. So the exhibition is based on these interviews that we did with the elders in that community. And so the narrative in the exhibit is based on that. Their whole life, they searched for a home. They had to flee their country and their home in North Vietnam when they were children and moved to the South, had to flee again after the fall of Saigon. So their whole life was this search for a home, and they found it here in New Orleans. And so we wanted to bring that making it home theme into the design of the exhibit. And
it's such a powerful story.
Yeah, and we created a kitchen and a living room, kind of as the places where stories are told in the family. And so that's the way that visitors can access those stories when they come to the exhibition. They can listen to the voices of the people that moved here.
Amazing, and again, it's all free. And what I also appreciate is that you all have some heirlooms that are also on display. Tell me about that.
Well, we reached out to the community and they lent things that they had.
Thank you, community.
Yeah, so like there's some of the guys who were in the South Vietnamese military lent their uniforms. There was one guy that we interviewed who was on a helicopter at the time of the fall of Saigon and just landed on an American ship, and that's what he was wearing when he left the country.
Wow.
We've got some beautiful dresses. Somebody lent their home altar, which was an altar where they would honor their ancestors in the home, and we wanted to have one in our exhibition since this is a way we're honoring that first generation.
And I don't know if you all heard that nugget, but they really started this process 10 years ago. This exhibit is 10 years in the making. But like I've been saying, I think it is so important that we share the stories of other cultures because they live here too. Tell me about Mr. Do. That's one of the featured people that you all have in the exhibit.
Well, Kim Do, he was an important person in the Vietnamese community here, but he was responsible for rescuing about 30,000 people out of South Vietnam.
Wow.
He was the chief of operations for the South Vietnamese Navy, and so he loaded up all the boats in the South Vietnamese Navy and got them out as Saigon was falling. That turned the fleet over to the United States, and so he was responsible for getting about 30,000 people out of the country.
And doesn't he have a connection to like Ben Franklin?
Yeah, he taught math. He came here like so many, they had to begin again their life when they came. And so he taught math at Ben Franklin for a while and then ended up working for Entergy for a number of years. He lived on the West Bank, but then moved over to the North Shore later in life.
What a story of resilience, a story of faith, a story of enduring power, of family. I absolutely think everyone should see this regardless of what you look like. Mark, congratulations to you and your team.
Oh, thank you.
10 years in the making, and you all have to check it out because at the end of the day, it's free to do so. Go learn a little something. Making It Home, that's the name of the free exhibition, and it's on display now at the Historic New Orleans Collection in the French Quarter. And starting tomorrow, May 1st, they'll offer guided tours every Wednesday through Saturday. That will be $10, but guess what? Children under the age of 17 are free. For more information, log on to HNOC.org. Mark, thank you so much for being here. And look, thank you all for being here as well. We're just getting started on the show today. We're talking more about the Vietnamese diaspora following the end of the Vietnam War. We have a local cartoonist hanging out in our LCMC Health Wellness Lounge. She's a part of a new issue marking the anniversary from famed literary magazine McSweeney's. T. Bowie joins us right after the break. Stay right there.